Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Daniel Davis's Deep Dive, where we take you down the hole to show you what's important for you that you don't normally get on the major media. And we've got another good one for you today. So we're going to look at something that's on the surface of it, though, when it was published on a lot of the major media, kind of left a lot of people scratching their head because they're not sure what the actual meaning was. In terms of the Russia-Ukraine war, it's been pretty well known from the beginning that Poland has been Ukraine's biggest supporter, really from the beginning, because Poland has a long-standing antipathy towards Russia. They've got a lot of bad blood, a lot of bad history. So it's not surprising to anybody that Poland was one of the biggest supporters of Ukraine and one of the biggest advocates for pretty aggressive action from NATO and whatnot to help Ukraine in their fight against Russia. So that caused a little bit of confusion among the Western audiences yesterday when at the United Nations, when everybody thought there was going to be solidarity among the Western contingent, and especially Poland and Ukraine, there was some pretty significant discord. There was an interview after Zelensky gave his UN General Assembly speech when the president of Poland, Andrzej Duda, gave an interview to local Polish news media in which he likened Zelensky, or actually Ukraine in particular, and he was implying Zelensky, to a drowning man, and that they have to be careful, when you're trying to rescue someone who's drowning, that they don't take you down with them. And it seemed pretty harsh against Ukraine and left a lot of people not clear what the meaning was. So I'm going to give you a little bit of the background of what's really going on here and what's significant. But first, I'm going to let you take a look at this clip. Now, it's going to be in Polish. He's going to be talking to his local media, but there's English subtitles. So take a look at that, and we'll come on the other side and tell you what it means.
Mamy trochę do czynienia tak z tonącym. My jesteśmy tym, który ratuje. Jak jest tonący, każdy, kto kiedykolwiek brał udział w ratowaniu tonącego, czy każdy, kto kiedykolwiek uczył się o tym, co dzieje się w tej sytuacji, wie o tym, że człowiek tonący jest niesłychanie niebezpieczny, ponieważ może pociągnąć w głębiny. Ma siłę niewyobrażalną na skutek obawy osobistej, wpływu adrenaliny i może po prostu utopić ratującego.
Now, what's going on behind the scenes there, and what he's referring to is that there has been, for the last several weeks, a lot of angst going kind of behind the scenes back and forth between Poland and Ukraine over the results of the grain deal, which had been in place for about a year between Russia and Ukraine to allow grain to go out so both nations could actually export their grains. And that came to an end in July. And then since that time, Russia has begun bombing a lot of the Black Sea ports to make it even more difficult for Ukraine to get their grain out. Well, so what Ukraine wanted to do was to use the land corridor through Poland and through into Europe directly so that they could send out their grain that way and that their farmers could still make some money. Well, that's a big problem for Poland and actually for a number of European states, because then there was flooding the market with a lot of Ukrainian grain that otherwise would be going like to Africa or wherever else. And that's competing with the Polish farmers, and some of the other Central and in the Eastern European states didn't want the Ukraine grain in there because it was going to compete with them and actually cost their farmers economic problems. So they have a ban. The European states actually have a ban on not allowing any Ukraine grain to be sold in Europe. They can transit through there, but they can't sell it. And of course, that makes it much more expensive and much more difficult for the Ukraine side. So they've been complaining about that because, look, the Polish and some of these other European states are all about helping Ukraine as long as it doesn't cost them anything. But this is starting to cost them stuff. Now, you compound that by the fact that there's an election coming up at the parliamentary election in Poland. And in the internal politics there's a big issue with the Polish population starting to get aggravated that they're starting to really pay a price now after this war is now going on a year and a half, and there doesn't seem to be any end. And now then their farmers are starting to suffer financially from it. And so they said, no, we're not going to do that. So we want this ban put on them. And they actually extended it beyond September, which is where it was originally going to, which now is putting Ukraine in an even bigger problem because the loss of the grain that they had going through the Black Sea is now compounded because they can't get it out through the back door either. And so they're getting really upset, and they think that, Poland, you've been trying to help us all this time, and now all of a sudden you're hurting us as much as Russia is. So that's leading to a lot of sniping in the background. And then Poland is just not willing to bend on this, because their politicians believe that to help Ukraine out in this case would cost them in the voting booth, and nobody wants to lose their job. And so now then you have this problem where Ukraine's kind of getting squeezed in the middle. And so here's a bigger problem, though. So now then you have this public spat. So now it's not just private. Now it's burst onto the scenes in the open here. And Zelensky is trying to coerce Poland and trying to use some public diplomacy to try to put pressure on Poland from the outside to try to make them reverse their course on this. And you see that the president of Poland was having none of it. So he made a very dramatic counter attack publicly by comparing Ukraine to a drowning man, that Poland's trying to help them and they could get dragged down by them, and they're not going to allow that. Well, then it got even worse, because about 2 hours later, the prime minister of Poland added to the drama when he posted this. And you see that I've got the English translation underneath it there. But basically, the most important thing was the last sentence there, where he says, "We will no longer transfer weapons to Ukraine because we're now arming Poland." And so what he's saying there is that they're no longer going to be given a lot of weapons that they had been doing from their own inventory to Ukraine, because they're now going to say, "Hey, we got to look out for ourselves. So we're going to be keeping our own weapons, and we're going to be building up our own weapons, not for Ukraine." So yet again, it's another big hit on the Ukraine side, because now that they're also, and nobody knows for sure what the prime minister means, how far that's going to go. Is it just weapons that Poland has and they're not going to send anymore, or are they not going to allow their country to be a transit point for weapons that are coming in from elsewhere, whether it's the United States or elsewhere in Europe? And it's unclear where it means, but what is for sure right now is that things continue to trend in a bad direction for the Ukraine side. They didn't get anything. They didn't get what they wanted at the NATO summit in Vilnius earlier this summer, where they wanted to get and Zelensky tried to press hard for a firm date when they would be invited into the alliance. They didn't get that. Now then, he wanted to get even more support from the United States at the UN General Assembly when he met with President Biden. He met with members of the Senate while he's been here, or some of which happened only hours ago as we're making this recording here on the 21st of September. And so far, he's got nothing. There's no more promises from the West. There's a small amount of aid that the President Biden talked about, but he specifically said, we are not going to give long-range, it's called ATACMS, long-range missile systems. Ukraine side has been trying to get for a long time. Now then, that's apparently not going to be on the table. So in addition to not getting anything new and not getting any additional large-scale commitments from the West, he actually has now more conflict with his closest partner in Europe. At the same time, their Ukraine side is not having success on the battlefield, and things just continue to go in a negative direction on both sides of the line for the Ukraine side, militarily as well as diplomatically and politically. And, this is just going to continue to move things in a direction to where hard questions are starting to be asked, I think, in more quarters. It was Senator Josh Hawley in a release, in a statement earlier today, after he met with Zelensky, one of many senators that met in a meeting with Zelensky on Capitol Hill. He said, look, I don't even see what the strategy is here. The American administration says that they want to have another $100 billion on top of the $113 billion that's already been given. But according to Hawley, he's saying, we don't even know what it's for. We don't know what the strategy is. We don't know what the objective is. What is this money going for? Is it just another forever war with no end in sight? And now people are starting to ask more open, hard questions as to what's the strategy? What are we trying to do? Because if the United States is pursuing a strategy that really has no objective or no viable path to success, the American people are going to start saying, hang on, why do we keep giving them our money and we don't even know what we're trying to accomplish. And they're not winning on the battlefield. If you saw some success, if you saw like this summer offensive by the Ukraine side had actually busted through the Russian lines and gotten down to the coast or even anywhere near it, and looked like there was, you know, a real wounding to the Russian side, then people would be a little bit more willing to say, okay, well, let's let this see where it goes. But that's not what happened. Instead, there has been, as you've seen in some of our previous episodes here, there's virtually no change in the front line since December of last year, despite everything that we've done. And even though nobody in the West wants to see Ukraine lose, nobody in the West wants to see Russia win. But at some point, and I think we're getting close to that point, we have to start asking the hard question of, this is the reality. What are we going to do that can succeed? What are we going to do that not just going to throw tens and scores of billions of dollars into a black hole that will produce nothing of value to either the United States or to Ukraine? And that, I think, is your big problem, that or the big problem for Ukraine, quite frankly, that the Americans are starting to say, and this is also going on throughout Europe, people are starting to say, we need to reevaluate this, because just a blanket for as long as it takes is not a strategy, and nothing good's coming out of this. And it's time to say, are we ready to start moving into a position to where a negotiated settlement is actually on the table and up front for discussion? And I think it's past time for that. And we'll see how the American people, how the American Congress, and ultimately how the White House starts to see that. But I believe that that's the most realistic outlook at this point. And there is your deep dive for today.